Rent was an NPC adventurer who couldn't level up for 10 years till a dragon ate and turned him into an undead skeleton. But when a freaky scientist tells him he can get stronger by evolving back to his human form, he lets her violate his body so he can become human and clap her again. It all began one morning when Rent went to the guild hall to look for a job that was suitable for his current rank. After minutes of staring at the available jobs on the wall, he left the guild hall and headed into the labyrinth, where he noticed a secret passageway to an unexplored area, which got him pumped because he realized he could find some valuable items in that area. Instead of reporting it to the guild, the greedy idiot decided to explore it himself so he wouldn't share his loot. However, after entering a mysterious room, he saw a dragon that made him wet himself in terror. As the dragon made its move to swallow him, his dreams of becoming a mithril-class adventurer were flushed down the toilet. He woke up several hours later and completely lost his mind when he realized that he was now an undead. He thought of heading back to town, but realized that he'd get instantly destroyed if he did. So he eventually picked up his sword and started making his way out of the dungeon. Just then, an undead came by, and he charged at it with intent to take it down, but ended up being dragged down by the weight of his own sword. The skeleton charged at him, but it ended up falling on the floor, and when he activated his spirit energy, he finally had enough strength to shatter the skeleton using his sword. Suddenly, the skeleton started glowing and his body absorbed a bit of its aura, which shockingly replenished the energy he'd used in unaliving it. He remembered a past discussion he had with his friend Lorraine, where she told him that skeletons could evolve into ghouls through a process known as existential evolution. And this made him decide to defeat all the monsters in that labyrinth in order to become a ghoul. As Rent easily took down another slime and tried to gather the fluid, but suddenly the slime's aura got absorbed in his body, causing him to transform into a ghoul. When he realized what he'd become, Rent got excited and decided to work even harder to become a higher-ranking monster that could blend in with humans. He noticed he had a mouth now and tried to use it to speak like a human. But he got frustrated when he realized he sounded like a zombie. In another part of the dungeon, Rena was having a tough time against a skeleton, and she eventually managed to slay it by slicing its head off. Rent, who watched from a corner, felt elated because it was the first time he'd seen a human in a while, and he initially wanted to head out and greet her, but pulled back when he remembered he looked like an escaped Walking Dead character. She eventually got to a passageway where an undead skeleton appeared in the area and tried to ambush her. As she desperately dodged the skeleton's attacks, however, the skeleton grabbed her sword and forced her into the wall. As the skeleton prepared to land the finishing blow, Rent made a dramatic entrance as he challenged the skeleton. The skeleton left her to face him head-on, but all it took was one powered-up slash by Rent to split it in half like a loaf of bread. After the battle, Rent tried to check on Rena, but naturally she was terrified by his looks, so he put down his sword and told her in a clearer voice that he wasn't intending to harm her. He introduced himself as an adventurer who became an undead, and she thanked him for saving her before asking if he intended to unalive her. He once again confirmed that he wasn't intending to slay her before asking her to help him get some clothes so that he could return to the city of Malt. She suggested getting a robe he could use in covering his body, and he handed her some coins which she could use in getting it for him. She introduced herself to him and cautiously left the dungeon while promising to repay the debt she owed him. After some time, Rena arrived with the package, and he was surprised to see that she actually came back. When Rent saw the cloak she got him, he was pleased. Rena cheerfully gave him the other items she got for him, which included gloves and boots, and Rent was stunned by how considerate she was. Rent eventually put on the new fit, which made him look almost as cool as Kirito, and the first thing he realized was that it was easy to move in. However, when he looked in the mirror, he found out his ugly ghoul face was showing clearly, but Rena remedied that situation by giving him a mask which she got for him. When he put that mask close to his face, it instantly got attached like a magnet, and he realized that he couldn't get it off no matter how hard he tried. Rena revealed that she got the mask at a market stall for a surprisingly cheap rate, which made Rent realize that it was carrying a curse which activated when the user put it on, causing Rena to apologize for bringing him a cursed item. Rent said it was okay because he needed to hide his face anyway. Afterwards, the two of them made their way back to Malt, and when they entered the city, Rena tried to ask Rent what the plan was, but he suddenly vanished and watched her look for him from a high spot in the city while deciding to find her again when he looked more human. That night, he went to Lorraine's home and saw her napping on the sofa. When he woke her up, he showed her his ghoul body, causing her to ask what happened to him. After Rent explained his story to Lorraine, she said that despite her years of studying monsters and magic, she'd never heard of anyone who got eaten by a dragon and turned into an undead. She asked if the dragon was still in the dungeon, and he replied that it was gone. She said the only reason she was believing his ridiculous story was because of his current abnormal state, and Rent was impressed that she was keeping a cool head despite the fact that he looked like a barbecued rat. She asked if he was really Rent now that he's a ghoul, and after pondering for a bit, he replied that he didn't know. She said it was exactly the kind of answer Rent would give and decided to face that issue later before asking him what he intended to do now. Rent replied that he wanted to continue being an adventurer so that he could chase his dreams of becoming a mithril, and he said he couldn't go to the guild looking the way he did. In light of this, Lorraine said she'd accept jobs on his behalf and gave him permission to stay at her place since he couldn't use the inn. When he asked if she was sure about her decision, she said she didn't mind, but then stipulated that he had to help her out with her research. She pointed out that no one's ever had a chance to study a monster who could use existential evolution directly, and when he asked if she intended to dissect him, she said she'd only take some flesh from time to time. Much later, Lorraine returned home after a trip and handed Rent the money for the slime fluid he gathered. He was stunned by how much it was, so she explained that his materials were always high quality, which made great beauty potions, and that she'd cut through guild fee by paying him directly. After taking the money, Rent went to a blacksmith shop called the Three-Pronged Spear, and when he got there, he handed his sword to the receptionist lady while telling her that he needed a new one. She inspected the sword and noticed that it was damaged severely, so he explained that he used the sword with magic, spirit energy, and divinity, causing her to be stunned because he was the second person she'd ever seen to have all three power sources. She agreed to keep it a secret, and when he paid her, she told him that the blacksmith, who was named Clope, would take several days to do the job and would probably want to speak with him throughout the process. Rent said he wasn't bothered by that and told her to contact Lorraine if she ever wanted to speak with him. Meanwhile, Lorraine was deep in her studies as she read about how ghouls were a lesser undead who had strong physical attributes that allowed them to survive even decapitation. She also found out that they preferred animal meat, specifically humans, and they were mostly found in labyrinths. Her book also revealed that there were known cases of powerful monsters turning humans into lesser undead, but in those cases, the victims not only lost their personalities, but also any kind of human emotion. This made her realize that Rent was a special case, but she doubted if he was truly the Rent she knew, even if he felt exactly the same. She remembered years ago when Rent was assigned to partner with her on a quest when he was still a rookie, and when they got to the forest, she noticed that the plants there were different from what the text suggested. Lorraine saw the world as a boring place back then, but she still became the youngest person to attain the title of Great Doctor, which allowed her to register as a silver-class adventurer. She went to the frontier nation of Yarlan to gather some herbs, and when she found the herbs she was looking for, she was surprised to see that Rent already knew how to harvest them. Just then, they were attacked by a goblin, and Rent shielded her while recommending a magic spell which she used to roast the goblin. After the battle, Rent confessed that he was sent to escort her because everyone was worried about her, and also revealed that he read about everything, including plants, in order to become an adventurer. Hearing this, Lorraine asked him to share his knowledge with her, and that was how their friendship began. Back in the present, Lorraine noticed that she was yet to reply to some letters, and she decided to ask Rent where she put them. At the same time, Rent met up with Clope, who promised to make his sword something special, and the receptionist gave him a sword which could only use magic and spirit energy to use for the meantime while they worked on his new sword. As he left, Clope revealed to his assistant that Rent was suffering a serious curse and that he wouldn't tell them about it because he was scared it would affect them in some way. During dinner that evening, Lorraine revealed to Rent that he was different from other ghouls because of his existential evolvability, and she asked him what he'd become next. He replied that he had no idea, but claimed that he aimed for his next evolution because he wanted to get as close to being human again as possible. She suggested he heads back to the dungeon to slay some monsters, and when he reacted with enthusiasm, she said he hadn't changed at all. A while later in the dungeon, a goofy-looking adventurer was about to become slime food until Rent made a dramatic save by destroying the slime. Rent noticed that the man was injured, but he walked away because he knew there were adventurers who pretended to be in trouble and robbed anyone who came to help them. Suddenly, the man blocked his path and begged to party up with him. While revealing the desperate situation he was in, Rent refused his offer and walked away. Rent suddenly changed his mind and decided to let him carry his backpack, causing the man to celebrate as he accompanied him. Minutes later, the two of them arrived at the room where he previously faced the dragon, and they searched around until the man found a secret tunnel. The man suggested reporting the tunnel to the guild so they could become millionaires, and Rent said the man could take all the money from it when they were done exploring. The tunnel led them to another empty room, where the brainless goof stumbled into a teleportation circle which transported him immediately, and Rent knew that these circles usually sent people to lower floors that were filled with monsters, so he used the teleportation circle to follow him. When he arrived at the floor, he saw the man unconscious on the floor and saw a giant skeleton, which made him realize he was in a boss room. The giant skeleton attempted to stomp Rent, but he dodged and reinforced his body with mana before striking the skeleton's leg, but unfortunately his attack did nothing to the skeleton. The monster tried to punch him to the ground, but he dodged, and he was surprised that spiritual energy did nothing to this creature. Because of this, he charged at it again, this time using magic energy, but his attack didn't even leave a mark on the skeleton. As Rent ran towards the monster again, he realized that the dungeon doors were shut and would only be opened after the boss was defeated. The skeleton monster marched towards him, causing him to panic, but he remembered his journey and decided that he'd never give up. He charged up his sword with divine energy, not minding what would happen to his sword in the process, and landed a brutal strike which destroyed one of the skeleton's legs, causing it to fall to the ground. As the skeleton monster tried to get up again, he ran on top of the monster's body and leapt to the air with a fully charged sword, which he used in destroying the monster's sword. After the battle, he used his divine energy to heal the dummy adventurer, and when the man asked if he was the one who slayed the giant skeleton, Rent confirmed that he was and showed him the massive magic stone which he earned by defeating it. Rent revealed his secret to the man and said he'd give him the magic stone on the condition that he helps him go to shops and the guild since he can't do it himself. The man agreed and said it was a one-sided favor, so Rent decided to add another request, which was that he could eat at his restaurant for free anytime he wanted. The man tearfully agreed while swearing that he'd never let his restaurant go bankrupt again, and after handing him the magic crystal, Rent sent him home. Rent saw another teleportation circle in the area which he wanted to explore, but he decided to leave it for later and head home instead. After leaving the labyrinth, the man took Rent to his restaurant, which was named the Red Dragon Tavern, and Rent wondered if the food was so horrible there that it unalived all of the customers. When the man's wife named Isabel came out, he told her about how Rent saved his life and showed her the magic stone before telling her about his new arrangement with Rent. The man finally introduced himself as Loris, and Rent made him promise not to tell anyone his identity before introducing himself as well. As Rent walked home, a sudden wave of darkness enveloped his mind as he thought about how he'd have preferred it if Loris turned out to be a lying scumbag. This trance-like state got even more intense when he entered Lorraine's home, and she tried to start a conversation with him, but he randomly hugged her tightly. She started to wonder if he was drunk, but he suddenly grew out some teeth and bit her in the shoulder, vampire style, causing her blood to splash all over the place. She shoved him away from her and dramatically asked Rent if he was still in there. Rent's pupils popped back out, making her thankful that he was still in there, and she used a massive divine spell to make him sleep. Several hours later, Rent woke up, and she asked him if he felt like something strange was in control of him. Rent nodded his head to show that he was in full control of himself and apologized for his earlier actions. When she asked how much of it he remembered, he said he remembered attacking her and also told her about how Loris and Lorraine looked delicious to him, causing him to lose control of himself. Lorraine said she expected it because she knew that ghouls preferred human flesh, and she told him to get some rest because she knew her attack definitely did some damage to him. When he asked to see her wound, she showed him that it was bandaged up and explained that she'd sold all her magic potions to the magic pharmacy. She said she'd make a new potion in the morning, but Rent decided to heal it himself using divinity, and as he healed her, she said it felt amazing because it was the first time she was getting healed using divine energy. When he finished healing her, she pointed out that his body looked more human and also that the cursed mask had changed into a form that looked just like Batman's mask. Rent wasn't pleased by this because it left his horrifying mouth exposed, and the mask suddenly transformed again into a form that covered his mouth, causing Lorraine to deduce that the mask was responding to his desires. Rent tested it out by transforming it back into its earlier form, and Lorraine suggested they take it off, but all efforts to do so yielded no positive results. Lorraine also pointed out that his voice was much clearer, and Rent guessed that it was because he'd evolved after slaying the giant skeleton. However, Lorraine said it was because he fed on her blood and flesh, and revealed that he had now evolved from a ghoul into a creature called a ghast. She explained that they were servants of vampires who were weaker than vampires, and asked if she could tell him her full hypothesis. When he agreed, she brought up the fact that monsters undergoing existential evolution usually transformed into beings that were more powerful than the previous one, and asked why he thought he changed from a skeleton to a ghoul. He couldn't fully muster up an answer, so she revealed that his monster was transforming based on his own desire to become more human. He asked why he didn't just transform into a vampire since it looked more human. And she explained that the system worked in a similar way to the guild's ranking, where he'd have to progress gradually. This made Rent presume that he'd become a vampire if he worked hard, and even return to becoming a human someday, and Lorraine said that there had to be a special condition for him to transform into a vampire, similar to how ingesting her blood turned him into a ghoul. She promised to help him as much as she could, and he thanked her. But then she went into mad scientist mode and said she'd begin some crazy experiments on him the next day. When morning came, Rent did some sword practice outside the house and went to return Clope's sword back to him. Clope was mad that his sword was damaged, and Rent explained that it was because he charged it with divinity while fighting a giant skeleton in an unexplored area. Rent asked him to get the new sword as soon as possible, and Clope said he'd lend him another sword since his main sword wasn't ready yet. After getting the sword, Rent left the store and made his way back home through the rowdy market. Much later, Lorraine used alchemy to transform some materials into a deadly poison on high she said was powerful enough to slay something called a red grizzly. Rent was terrified, and he asked if it was going to unalive him. After taking a full vial of the poison, Rent looked like he was writhing in pain, so she asked if she should hand Bin that antidote. However, Rent said he was okay because the poison only tasted horribly, and this made Lorraine reach that conclusion that no poison could work on him despite the fact that herbs and healing potions did. He told her he didn't feel the need to sleep, even as a ghast, and when she asked about his appetite, he said it was little, although he did feel a desire for human flesh and blood. She handed him a potion which he assumed to be poison, but when he opened it and sniffed it, he was shocked as he realized it was blood. Lorraine said it was her blood and revealed that she'd cast preservation magic on the vial. She explained that despite the fact that he felt reluctant to ingest human blood, he had fun doing it at regular intervals to stop him from losing control. Hearing this, Rent ingested a drop of the blood and revealed that it tasted delicious before revealing that the thirst he previously felt was now gone. She asked if he needed only one drop, and he replied that it was enough for him before promising her that he'd make it last. Afterwards, he revealed his intentions of heading to the guild to take a job before going into the labyrinth again, and Lorraine reminded him that he'd need to show his ID to get a job, also adding that seeing him looking like a monster could cause an uproar at the guild hall. However, Rent said nobody would care because he was a bronze adventurer. and Lorraine argued that they would notice because despite his cannon fodder status, everyone at the guild really liked him because he used to help out new adventurers and take jobs that no one else would take. She then revealed that there were talks of recruiting him to work for the guild, and when he asked how she knew about that, she said she had some pals within that guild. Rent said he had no plans to retire or work for the guild, and Lorraine brought up the fact that he needed to be the one taking jobs for himself if he wanted to level up. However, she knew that the guild finding out that Rent was miraculously back from the dead would be trouble, so she suggested he take another identity. Some minutes later, Rent arrived at the guild hall fully dressed in his Walmart Jinwoo drip, and he told Sheila that he wanted to register as an adventurer. She handed him the registration form, and as he filled it, he remembered how clueless he was when he initially filled the form for the first time, but he also knew that his goal hadn't changed since then. Back when Lorraine initially suggested he switched identities, Rent reminded her that it was against guild rules to register using two names, but she said it'll be okay because no one would find out and he'd be starting all over again as a wandering adventurer. When he handed the form back to Sheila, she was shocked because he'd filled in the name Rent Vivier, and she told him about the Rent she knew who went missing a few days back. Rent was surprised that she was worried about him, and he decided to continue his facade by asking if the Rent she was talking about was Rent Fiona, which was his original name. When she asked how he knew his name, he said Lorraine told him, and also revealed that he'd been staying with her for the meantime, which confirmed the rumors Sheila had been hearing about a strange man frequently going to see Lorraine. Afterwards, she finished up his paperwork and handed him an ID badge while telling him that he was now an Iron-class adventurer. When Rent arrived at the labyrinth, he saw two adventurers fighting off against a goblin, and he instantly realized that the male was a swordsman named Lies, while the female named Laura was a healer. He assumed that they were newbies, but when a slime suddenly appeared in the area, Laura easily disposed of it with a flame spell while the Lies charged at the goblin. Seeing that they could handle themselves, Rent moved forward to look for the unexplored part of the dungeon he left behind previously. He stepped on the magic circle, which teleported him to a room where he saw the bones of a person who used to be living in the dungeon. When he tried to investigate it, he heard a voice which asked him what he was doing there. When he looked back, he saw a woman armed with a sword, and he instantly knew she was bad news. He says he was an adventurer who was only searching for something, but she translated his words in a way that suggested he was there to steal. She said she didn't want that place to be disturbed, and then fired a massive magic spell that blasted him to the wall while ripping his cloak apart in the process. When he got back up, she noticed his ghastly body and apologized for misunderstanding him. She gave him her cloak to replace the one she destroyed and told him not to tell the guild about that place or let anyone enter without coming down with them. As a souvenir, she gave him a special map called the Acacia Map, which had the ability to record spaces the owner had traveled, and sent him outside of the dungeon using a special space warping spell. The next day, he told Lorraine about what happened, and when he applied his magic on the map, it displayed a detailed layout of the labyrinth, which even showed the positions of Lies and Laura within the dungeon. Lorraine was impressed by this, and when she asked him to try bringing up another labyrinth, he made the map display the layout of the Labyrinth of New Moon, but explained that it wasn't complete because there were places there he was yet to explore. After checking the cloak which the mysterious lady left him, Lorraine said it had strong magic resistance, and Rent said the woman's magic power was at least gold level, causing Lorraine to be suspicious of that room he entered. The next day, he returned to the dungeon and easily took down a skeleton that tried to attack him, but when he tried to go back to that room, he noticed a dead end in his path, which made him realize that the mysterious lady didn't want him to come back at that moment. The following morning, Rent approached Sheila about a job he was interested in which involved slaying 3 orcs, and despite her warnings, he insisted on taking the job, so she gave it to him. A while later, Sheila was shocked when Rent said he'd already defeated the 3 orcs, and he presented some of its meat to show her that he completed the task. Sheila was impressed by the fact that the orc meat was nearly preserved and dressed properly, and she said the client would be impressed by his efforts. After confirming that the job was complete, she told him to wait a minute as she went inside to get something. and the NPC adventurers in the area around started bad-mouthing him, causing him to feel that he'd stood out a bit too much despite being an iron-class adventurer. When Sheila came back, she revealed that she'd just spoken with her manager and asked him to take a promotion exam which would boost him to bronze class if he passed. She said it was rare for someone to take the exam so soon after registering, but they decided to let him do it because of his potential, and he agreed to take the exam. When he told Lorraine about it that evening, she asked what name he used to register at the guild, and when he told her, she choked on her coffee. She asked why he chose her family name, and he explained that he was posing as her relative because it wouldn't be fair to her if everyone started thinking she had a weird man as her bedroom buddy. She said he didn't need to worry about her reputation since she was just a broke academic who came there because she couldn't make it in the capital and claimed that she didn't care what people thought about her. Rent said he didn't want to cause her trouble since she'd done a lot for him, and when she started listing the household chores he helped her out with. He said she'd done more for him because he was still human thanks to her. The next day, Rent went to the guild hall for the bronze exams and Sheila was surprised that he was taking the exam that soon instead of studying in preparation for the next one. So he explained that he couldn't wait months for the next exam. Just then, a random idiot entered the building while yawning and Rent immediately knew that he'd lose points because of his lateness. The examiner announced that they were kicking off the exam with a knowledge test and explained that they'd be tested based on their knowledge of guild rules and the proper handling of monster drops. He also stated that only those who passed that exam would be allowed to take the practical portion of the test, and Rent knew that the practical exams took different forms every year, which meant that it wouldn't be gathering herbs like it was during his exam. The adventurers followed the examiner into the exam hall, and during the written exam, Rent saw that Laura was there, which made him realize that Rise was taking the oral exam. In that city, it was rare for people to know how to read and write, but Rent knew the exam would be easy for him because he'd already learned all of that and more during his initial preparations to become an adventurer, as well as the fact that it was his second time taking the exam. After the written exam, most of the doofuses were complaining about how hard it was, but Sheila congratulated Rent for getting a perfect score. When he asked her what the practical exam would be, she revealed that it was to form a party with a few other examinees and carry out a job for the guild. She paired him up with Rise and Laura, and after they introduced themselves to each other, the examiner revealed that the practical exam would take place at the Labyrinth of New Moon. He said their job was to reach the point written on a map which he'd hand to every party, and when one of the adventurers asked if there were limits, he said they could go all out if they wanted to. The examiner also revealed that they were all going to the same spot, and that the team that arrived there first would receive a special reward. When they arrived at the labyrinth, Rent suggested they buy a map and revealed that the map they were given was 15 years old. He approached a shady-looking man who charged them 2 silvers for a complete map, causing Rise and Laura to lose their mind until Rent requested a map of only the first floor for a much cheaper price. After buying the map, they compared it with the one they were given for the exam and realized that it was way clearer, which made Rise and Laura ask why the guild gave them bad maps. In response to their question, Rent pointed out that the point of the exam was to see if they had what it took to be an adventurer, and told them that the guild could be surprisingly mean sometimes. The 3 of them explored the labyrinth and eventually reached a spot where some skeletons blocked their paths. They easily destroyed the skeletons, and afterwards, Rent found an incense on the floor, which he said was being used to lure monsters to that area. He also pointed out that there were humans waiting to ambush them ahead, and the rookie duo started panicking, so he decided to take the lead. Just then, a bald-headed adventurer blocked Rent's path, and he held him off for a bit before moving forward to take care of the man's partners. Rise held down the bald adventurer, while Rent easily took down a comrade of his that wielded a bow. When the 3rd assassin tried to take them out with magic, Rent deflected his flame attack before one-shotting him. After a bit of struggle, Rise and Laura took down the bald assassin using a combo move, and after tying up the hooligans, Rise revealed that they were also examinees who were trying to make them fail, causing Rent to lecture them about how monsters weren't the only threat in labyrinths. Rise said he'd follow Rent's orders as they moved on, and after they left, a mysterious cloaked man freed the hooligans and plotted with them. Meanwhile, Sheila met with the guild master, who revealed that he was suspicious of Rent and told her to tell him anything she finds about him. Back at the labyrinth, Rent and company arrived at the door to a boss room, and Rent was in the middle of teasing Rise for being scared when some other adventurers arrived. The trash bags tried to insult them, but Rent put the fear of God in them before telling them to go into the dungeon first. They happily accepted his invitation, but ended up running back with half of their squad injured shortly after, and Rent told Rise that they wouldn't die even if they lost the boss fight. He went further to tell Rise that there was no shame in giving up a fight he couldn't win. But Rise refused to give up, and the three of them marched inside the boss room together. Inside the boss room, they encountered an enormous slime monster called a Grand Slime, and when the rookie duo expressed their determination to beat the monster, Rent was surprised that they didn't just make a run for it because the exam didn't require them to actually take on the monster. When Rise charged at it, Rent told him to aim for the core, and he sprinted past several acid attacks before plunging his sword into its body. Unfortunately, that attack did 0 damage to the slime, and it quickly tossed him into the ground before firing several more acid attacks at him, which he managed to dodge. Rent told Laura to focus on strengthening her magic, and he had confidence that the rookie duo were capable of defeating the Grand Slime. Before they entered the dungeon, he informed them that magic was the key to defeating slimes and asked Laura if she had any huge flame spells. She confirmed that she did, but said she needed time to activate it, so he told her that he'd block the slime's attacks while she was casting. However, Rise said he wanted to be the one to fill that role instead, yet in the present time, he was fighting for his life while trying to evade the Grand Slime's brutal attacks. Laura told Rent to help him out, so he charged in and slashed through all of the Grand Slime's acid blasts alongside Rise until Laura said her spell was ready to go. Rent and Rise jumped out of harm's way, and Laura annihilated the Grand Slime using a massive flame spell. Rent told Rise to finish it off before it regenerated, so he destroyed the slime's core with his sword, and they celebrated the fact that they beat the boss. While they were gathering the slime fluid, Rent explained that the fluid would fetch them a handsome sum, which they'd split amongst themselves, and some dumb examinees tried to get ahead of them, but ended up getting knocked out by a sleeping gas trap. Rent said that getting to the chosen spot first didn't necessarily mean passing, and when Rise acted confused by his words, Laura explained that they were set up into thinking the exam was a race, which it wasn't. Rent added that the job of an adventurer was to finish the mission before the deadline, and stated that the reason they weren't informed was because it was something that a true adventurer would already know. Afterwards, they arrived at the designated spot, where a man congratulated them for being the first ones to arrive, and because of their newly acquired trust issues for the guild. The rookie duo asked him to prove his identity as a certified guild member, which he did. Afterwards, he gave them 3 bronze chips and told them to show them to the guild's front desk in order to become bronze-class adventurers. After collecting his chip, Rise asked about the bonuses they were promised, so the man handed them some special potions which he said the first 3 teams were entitled to. After collecting the potions, Rent told them that he needed to make a little side trip before they head home, and he took them to a part of the dungeon that looked like a forest. As they marveled at the scenery, Rent said that this was the world they were about to be a part of, and when Rise asked to take a look around, he immediately declined their offer. Eventually, they returned to the guild hall and handed the bronze chips to Sheila. When Rise asked if they were officially bronze-class adventurers, a man showed up and handed Sheila a report before explaining that he was watching them throughout the exam because the exam also tested what kind of person the examinees were. After resting his report, Sheila told the gang that they were officially bronze-class adventurers, and while the rookie duo celebrated, Rent was stunned by the fact that he was a bronze class again. Afterwards, Rise and Laura thanked Rent for all his help, and after they left, Sheila told Rent she had something to ask him. Hearing this, he immediately realized that they figured out his secret, and he opted to leave the guild forever before Sheila stopped him and asked what really happened to him. They went to a house where he revealed that he was facing a serious problem which he didn't want anyone getting involved in, not even the guild. Sheila revealed that she hadn't told the guild about him, and when he asked why, she said she wanted to find out that truth for herself. She also said she told the man who was watching him during the exam because he was her brother and she could trust him to keep a secret. She then handed him a magic contract which stated that if she shares his secret, she'd suffer a serious penalty backed by magic, and if she doesn't carry out her end of the bargain, she'd be forced to leave the guild and travel to a land where slavery was practiced. When he asked why she was going that far, she said she wanted to help him because it was he who helped her grow up, and then he agreed to her terms. After signing the contract, Rent showed her his face, which made her react like someone who just seen something as scary as Diddy's sausage. He revealed to her that he was an undead and told her that he had no intention of harming anyone. When he tried to leave, she stopped him and said she believed he was a good person who wouldn't hurt anyone before promising to help him out. That evening, she accompanied him to Lorraine's place, and when Sheila told Lorraine all that Rent had told her, she tried to make her soil herself by jokingly threatening to boil her in a pot of urine. Lorraine took a more serious tone as she revealed what kind of monster Rent was, and when Sheila said she already knew, Lorraine suggested they all had dinner together. As they ate together, the girls sang praises to Rent for his Gordon Ramsay-level cooking skills, and Sheila revealed that the guild was suspecting that Rent was the culprit behind a series of missing rookie adventurers in town which they believed to be kidnappings. She also revealed that people in town were spreading all sorts of rumors about him, and Rent decided to stop going to the labyrinth for the next couple of days in order to silence the noise a bit. The next day, Rise and Laura looked through the quest board for a job, while Sheila discussed with the guild master, and she informed him that Rent was an amazing adventurer. Several days later, Rent left the house to head to the labyrinth, and Lorraine, who was just waking up, was worried because she wanted him not to go adventuring until the kidnappings calmed down. He met up with Clope, who gave him his new sword and revealed that it was capable of handling magic, spiritual energy, and divinity just like he asked. When Clope asked him to test it out, he first charged up the sword with magic energy and used it to destroy a wooden target. Seeing this, Clope pointed out that his mana had gotten way more powerful than before, and Rent proceeded to flex even more by destroying the second wooden target with the sword charged with spiritual energy. For the final target, Rent charged the sword up with divinity and sliced it clean in half, and while Rent basked in the glory of his new sword, Clope pointed out that the wooden target which he just slashed with divinity had begun to sprout some leaves. They realized that it was the effect of divine energy, and Clope asked Rent how he was able to use divinity which was normally granted by the gods of their land. Rent said he once repaired a shrine that had been abandoned despite not even knowing what a god was. Clope said he wanted to keep the wood choppings that had divinity in them, and Rent agreed before asking to practice some more in that area. Clope asked what more he wanted to do since he'd already flexed all 3 power sources on the logs, and Rent replied that he wanted to try all 3 of them at once. For this next training bout, Clope set up a massive log and told him about a technique called Mana Spirit Fusion, which allowed people to massively power up their magic and spirit skills by using both at the same time. However, he stated that you'd have to be a master to attempt it, because failing it would result in the user's body going kaboom. When Clope asked Rent if he still wanted to go through with the attempt, he replied that he did because he knew that an explosion wouldn't be enough to destroy his current monster body. Clope then gave him the sword which couldn't handle divinity and told him to use it in place of his new sword because it would be cheaper to replace if it got damaged, which made it perfect for testing. Rent charged up his body with spirit energy and magic, and the aura was almost too overwhelming for him to manage, but he used it to completely vaporize the wooden log. Clope, who was stunned by what he'd just witnessed, asked if he really wanted to add divinity to his next attack, and Rent replied that he'd do it. Rent resisted the physical backlash on his body as he charged up his sword with all 3 power sources, and as the sword started shattering, Rent used it to slash the wooden target, causing it to transform into a perfectly shaped wooden ball. Afterwards, he apologized to Clope for destroying his sword, which was now a powder, and Clope explained that he couldn't use divinity with a normal weapon because he could break the bonds holding the weapon together. He stated that the new sword was made to handle divinity, but it couldn't handle that attack he just pulled off, meaning it could only allow him to do Mana Spirit Fusion at most. Afterwards, Rent walked through the town and saw an adventurer causing a commotion on the street as he rejected a job offer by a civilian. Rent arrived just in time to stop the adventurer from getting physical with the boy and handed him a coin so he could back off while he listened to the boy's offer. When Rent asked the boy what his offer was, the boy begged him to defeat something called the Lord of the Lake. The boy later introduced himself to Rent and Lorraine as Ryuntis from a village named Tatsu and told them about a legend in his village where they once offered up a beautiful girl who was brimming with mana yo, the Lord of the Lake, in exchange for saving the village. He said they still held the festival in the village once a year to commemorate that day, but this time, the Lord of the Lake actually appeared and ate the girl who was playing the role of the sacrifice. Afterwards, the Lord of the Lake demanded more sacrifices, causing several other girls in the village to die, and Ryuntis begged them to help him because the next girl to be sacrificed was his little sister. Rent made his way to the mission spot with Ryuntis on a carriage, and he knew that the mission was to save his sister and not slay the monster, but he felt that there was something fishy about the whole thing. When they arrived at Tatsu, Ryuntis explained that the village had gotten less lively ever since the Lord of the Lake appeared, and he showed him an X marking on his door, which indicated that their house had to offer their daughter to the Lord of the Lake. He also revealed that the person who put the marking on the door was a Kelpie who served the Lord of the Lake, and Rent pointed out that a Kelpie was a powerful monster. Just then, Ryuntis' sister Amaris came out of the house and smacked her brother around for bringing a weird Aints wannabe to their home before begging Rent to leave so that she could fulfill her obligations to the village. However, Rent said that only Ryuntis could rescind the offer since he was the one who hired him, so she invited him to their home while expressing her desire to become the sacrifice. The next morning, Rent met up with a merchant in the village who informed him that the Lord of the Lake was angry before advising him to get back to town. When evening came, the people of the village tearfully helped Amaris prepare for the sacrifice, and they told her about her brother's efforts in trying to stop the festival, which made her cry. Later that night, Rent met up with Amaris in her room and promised her that he'd handle the Lord of the Lake before telling her not to make her brother sad. During the festival, some weirdly dressed men said some incantations while Amaris went aboard a boat which Rent was on. Rent rowed the boat while Ryuntis rowed another one behind him, and they got to a spot where the Lord of the Lake appeared. When Rent engaged it in combat, he realized that it was only a fake projection by the ugly merchant he saw earlier, and he wasted no time in destroying the merchant and his underlings. Afterwards, they took the culprits to the village all tied up and revealed what they'd done, causing the villagers to ask about the other sacrifices. The merchant revealed that they were still alive and being kept in a particular building which he directed them to. The next day, Rent said goodbye to Ryuntis, and as he was about to leave, Amaris sent him off with a kiss on the chin. When Rent got back home, he told Lorraine about everything he experienced at the village, and she teased him for rizzing up yet another girl he saved. Several days later, Rent was staring at the quest board, and he noticed a job which had only a bronze piece as payment. When Sheila approached him, he told her he intended to keep his promise of staying away from the labyrinth for the meantime, and she said she could help if he was looking for a quick job. When he brought up the bronze piece job, she said it was a pretty difficult job, which many people thought about, and it involved gathering a dragon blood flower, which only bloomed next to poisonous swamps. He told her the story surrounding the flower, which involved a dragon falling in love with a human, and his blood became a bright red flower called the dragon blood flower. Sheila said that girls who recorded that flower would be loved forever, and revealed that the flower was needed by children of an orphanage for its medicinal purposes because they needed to save someone dear to them. After hearing this, Rent immediately took the job. When he arrived at the orphanage, he tried to knock on the door, but the door knocker broke because of his gorilla strength, so he fixed it using slime fluid and knocked the normal way. The door was answered by a charming lady who told him that he'd have to come back later because the headmistress named Lillian wasn't around. When he told her he was an adventurer who took their job at the guild, she said she thought he was the debt collector and invited him into the house. He followed her inside, and when she announced to the orphans that he was an adventurer, they all swarmed him and started asking him a lot of questions about himself. The lady reminded them of the warning she previously gave them about adventurers being scumbags, and she apologized to Rent when she realized she just low-key shaded him. Rent said it was okay and gave the orphans a warning of his own by telling them to stay away from weird-looking people. After they left, the the lady started telling him about how nice the headmistress Lillian was, and he introduced himself as a bronze-class adventurer, which shocked her because she thought they'd be getting an iron-class adventurer. When he asked if she was the one who requested the job, she confirmed that she was and introduced herself as Elias. Rent brought up the fact that dragonblood flowers were extremely rare and asked her why she needed it. She told him to keep their secret and took him to a room where the headmistress Lillian was resting in bed. Lillian introduced herself as the priestess of the Eastern Sky Church and thanked him for helping out the orphanage despite the meager sum he was getting paid. She told him that despite the basement's small size, monsters appeared there, and she couldn't have the orphans deal with them. Before she could say more, she started coughing, so Elias told her to rest while she filled Rent in on everything else he needed to know. After leaving the room, Elias told Rent that Lillian had a disease called malaccumula, which caused evil energy to accumulate in the body of strong divinity users whenever they tried to use it. She revealed that the only way to heal it was with the blood of a holy maiden or special medicine, which was what they needed the dragon blood flower in order to make. Rent asked if Lillian knew what her disease was, and Elias said it was best she didn't because if she knew, she'd surrender to the disease and have another priestess take over the orphanage. Hearing this, Rent said he'd help her get the dragon blood flower, and Elias was stunned because she thought that no one would ever accept the job. When she asked if he could really do it, he promised that he'd get the flower for her, causing her to thank him. However, he said they needed to clean up the basement of the orphanage first, and when they got there, he gave her a little sword to protect herself. Just then, a possessed rat tried to attack Rent, and he initially knocked it away, but it charged at him again and managed to bite him in the hand before he shook it off. All of a sudden, the rat's body changed colors and Rent realized that he could now order the rat around like his own personal Pokemon. That evening, Rent introduced his new little friend to Lorraine, and she explained that vampires had the power to make and control familiars, which was something she wasn't aware he could do as well. When he asked if he could keep him, Lorraine agreed but went into mad scientist mode as she said she'd experiment on him using samples of his body. When she tried raising up the rat, it bit her hand and she decided to name it Edel, which stood for Noble One in ancient language. Rent revealed that he couldn't understand the rat's language, but he could tell what it was thinking. During dinner, Lorraine told Rent about the Tarask Swamp, which was the only swamp in the area where he could find the dragon blood flower, and when he said he was going alone, she warned him that there was a unique type of wyvern there called a Tarask. However, Rent said he didn't intend to fight it, and he instead intended to keep it away using holy water, but she warned him that it didn't always work. When he tasted the food, he was stunned by how good it tasted, and Lorraine revealed that her secret ingredient was a drop of her blood. The next day, Rent arrived at the Tarask Swamp, and he patrolled the area until he was attacked by some archer goblins. After deflecting their arrow shots, he proceeded to clap all of the goblins, and afterwards, he power walked away until he stepped on a bridge which collapsed, causing him to fall into the river. Just then, a monstrous fish attacked him from the river, and Edel snacked while watching him have an intense battle against this ferocious monster. After defeating the fish monster, he picked up Edel and wondered if all vampire familiars were this useless. Meanwhile, Sheila met up with Lorraine and asked her why becoming a mithril-class adventurer was so important to Rent, but Lorraine said she had no idea and further stated that she didn't want to pry into his past. When Sheila expressed her concerns about Rent potentially fighting a dangerous Tarask, Lorraine said it would be okay because Rent would definitely find a way to defeat it. Back at the evil swamp, the Tarask chased Rent around until he arrived at a dead end, which forced him to face it head-on. He tried to take it down using several brutal attacks, but his sword couldn't penetrate its hard skin. All of a sudden, Edel ran towards the dragon and flew into the Tarask's mouth using a bit of Rent's divinity. After causing a bit of ruckus in the monster's body, Edel flew back out and Rent thanked him for the hint before charging up his sword with divinity and beheading the monster. Afterwards, he gathered the monster's remains and went deeper into the forest to a spot where he found an entire garden of the dragon blood flowers. Before he could gather the flowers, he was approached by a mysterious elven man. When the man said he was there alone, Rent said the Tarrasque swamp wasn't a place where normal people could roam about by themselves, and this made the man reveal that he had a magic item that nullified poison as well as holy water to drive through Tarrasque away. The man revealed that he was after the dragon blood flowers and asked if he could have some of them. Rent agreed, and as the man walked past him, Rent realized that he was the one who wasn't normal between them. They both gathered their fair share of dragon blood flowers, and the man revealed to Rent that his mistress wanted the flowers themselves and added that the flowers wouldn't last long after being uprooted, unlike the medicine that could be made from them, which could last for a long time. When Rent asked if his mistress was badly ill, he confirmed that she was and expressed his desire to stay by her side. He went further to say that he was looking for someone who would bring them dragon blood flowers at regular intervals and asked Rent if he was an adventurer. Rent introduced himself as a bronze class adventurer, and the man said he'd be willing to work with him if he found the pay and working conditions to his liking. When Rent agreed, he introduced himself as Isaac and promised to introduce him to his mistress after their arrangements were finalized. After leaving the swamp, Rent went to the guild hall and presented the remains of the Tarrasque to Sheila, who lost her cool when she realized he defeated one. Afterwards, she took him to see a butcher named Dario, and they all geared up in poison masks before Rent removed the Tarrasque's body from the bag he was carrying it in. After inspecting the body, Dario was impressed by the fact that there was barely any harm done to its shell, and he revealed that the best ways to defeat a Tarrasque were usually to attack outside of its poison range in order to weaken it, which always left the shell damaged. Dario asked if he took it out in one hit, and when he confirmed that he did, Dario said it was going to be worth a lot of money. After they left the butcher's place, Rent thanked Sheila for helping him out, and she cheerfully pointed out that he'd gotten stronger since he was able to defeat a Tarrasque all by himself. She claimed that he was already at the level of a silver-class adventurer, and afterwards, Rent stood by a bridge and realized he was only a pathetic fraud who got stronger because of his monster powers. He knew he wanted to become human again, but he feared that doing so might make him the cannon fodder he once used to be, and he wondered if he could ever become a mithril-class adventurer as a human. When he returned to the orphanage, he broke the handle of the door knocker again, and as he was repairing it, he was approached by Elias, who he informed that he'd completed the mission. When Rent handed them the dragon blood flower, Elias and a pair of adventurers she was with were impressed by how well it was prepared, and the two adventurers introduced themselves as Umberto the healer and Norman the herbalist. Norman said he could confidently make the medicine to treat the malacumula disease, and when he asked if he could use the leftovers of the flowers to do other forms of medicine, Elias instantly agreed. Rent asked them if they wanted more dragon blood flowers, and when they said they did, he gave them the whole bag of it he gathered and told them to put it to good use instead of paying him for it. Afterwards, Elias handed Rent a document which stated that he'd officially completed the job and expressed her gratitude towards him for saving her the stress of becoming an adventurer just to save Lillian. When he asked if she still wanted to become an adventurer, Elias said she wanted to become an adventurer like Rent who helps people who were in need. When Edel jumped back on his shoulder, Rent informed Elias that Edel's former comrades who were living in the orphanage basement would protect her, and she was so impressed that she wished to be able to tame monsters like Rent did when she became an adventurer. He told her she needed to start early if she wanted to become an adventurer, and offered to train her when he had time. She said it would be problematic because she neither had money to buy a sword nor train in magic, but Rent said it was okay because he had a friend who wasn't doing anything with her spare time. However, Elias refused because she didn't want to depend on him all the time, and because of this, Rent offered to give her the money to start her training so she could repay him back when she started earning money from her adventuring. Elias said she'd pay back with interest, and they officially sealed the deal with a handshake. That evening, Rent told Lorraine about everything he discussed with Elias, and she brought up the fact that he basically called her a lazy bum before warning him to be careful with his words around girls. Lorraine tried to bring up a friendly conversation they had in past years, but Rent acted like he didn't know what she was talking about, so she snapped and threatened to unalive him with a powerful magic spell, causing him to recite the ultimate simp poem to calm her down. Somehow this made her even more suspicious since she thought he said that speech to every girl he met, and when he said he was only saying his mind, she got so flustered that she left to blush in the next room. The next morning, Rent met up with Sheila at the guild hall, who told him about the later household which were requesting his services specifically for a job. When he checked the job request from, he realized it was from Isaac, and Sheila revealed that the latter household weren't nobles, but they were a very old house with a lot of influence over the city of Malt. She also informed him that the previous generations of guild masters were warned not to offend the later household, and stated that he could not refuse a request from the Laters if he wanted to keep living in the city. He agreed to take the request and decided to pay them a visit. Meanwhile, Lillian, Umberto, and Norman informed Lillian of her condition, and also told her that they had a cure for the disease thanks to the efforts of Rent. At the same time, Rent arrived at the Later house, where he was informed by a guard that the garden at the entrance was a difficult maze, and also said that those who managed to reach the mansion were given a special magic item from the head of the household. When Rent asked the guard for advice, he said the sun wouldn't help, and Rent walked into the maze, where he attempted to use his special map after wandering aimlessly for hours. The map didn't work, so he continued his patrol until he realized he was completely lost. As he continued to patrol the maze, Rent wondered why the mental map he'd created in his head hadn't led him to the entrance of the mansion. He eventually arrived at a spot where he met a witch wearing a hat who invited him to have a tea break with her, and Rent agreed to chill with her a bit. As she poured him some tea, he realized that she was the daughter of the Later household, and also figured out that the teapot she was using was a magic item. The pot magically transformed some hot water she poured in it into some tea, and she explained that the teapot had the ability to recreate the taste of any tea that it's ever been used to brew. He was impressed by this reveal, and when he asked where she got it, she said there were two types of magic items, the ones found in labyrinths and the ones made by craftsmen to imitate the former. She revealed that the magic teapot was discovered 200 years ago in the labyrinths, and that it was worth around 300 platinum. Hearing this, Rent was stunned because he knew even 1 platinum would be enough to change his miserable life forever, and he realized that the Later family were richer than most nobles. However, the girl said it was more than worth it because adventurers risked their lives in the labyrinth in order to obtain it. When he tasted the tea, he was impressed by how delicious it was, and she asked if his mask was a magic item. When he confirmed that it was, she asked how he obtained it, and when he told her, she asked if he could give it to her. He realized that she was so interested in it because the Laters were known for collecting magic items, and when she offered to pay for it, he knew he wanted to make some money by selling it. But at the same time, he knew that doing so would leave his undead face exposed to the world. He apologetically rejected her offer and thanked her for the tea. As he was about to continue his journey, she gave him a hint for passing the maze, which was to avoid looking at the sun, and he was surprised by the fact that he was once again being told about the sun. Despite her hint, he stared at the sun as he walked through the maze, and all of a sudden, the sun vanished. He threw a stone in the spot in the air where the sun was, and when it vanished, he realized that there was an active teleportation spell in the area. He wondered if it was a one-way teleportation spell, and he ran to another spot in the maze where he realized that he'd been going in circles all along. Using this newly gained knowledge, he patrolled the maze for several more hours until he finally arrived at the mansion that evening, and he met the girl from earlier who introduced herself as Laura Later, the head of the Later family. He was surprised that she was the head of the family despite being a lowly, and he introduced himself before asking for his reward for passing the maze test. Laura asked him to pick any magic item he wanted from their mansion, and he toyed with her a bit by asking her to give him the one that created the maze. They were led by the butler Isaac into a basement where Laura explained that magic items made by humans were more reliable, although humans could only make the simplest things like the lights in the basement, which turned on automatically as they walked through. They eventually arrived at a room which had a large collection of magic items, and as they walked through, Laura told him about how all magic items were special in some way, and gave him a demonstration by throwing a ball which she said would bounce forever when thrown. Rent asked why she collected all the magic items, and she said it was because she was obsessed with doing so. She showed him another magic item she had, which was basically a remote-controlled airship that any of us could order from Temu, and Rent initially thought it was trash until she showed him its ability to project images into his mind like a magical drone, while explaining that it was from that item that airships were originally modeled. They went even deeper into the room where Rent checked out some other magic items, and when he accidentally placed his hands on one, it absorbed a bit of his mana and awakened as a giant golem. When it started attacking them, Laura asked Isaac to shut it down, and while he struggled to do so, Rent fought for his life while evading all of the monster's massive attacks. Laura told Rent that he wouldn't be able to beat it in battle, and he said he wasn't intending on doing so before dodging another stomp attempt by the golem. Rent counterattacked by slicing off one of the golem's arms, and he remembered Lorraine telling him about the monster's weakness, which was an inscription on its forehead which he could edit to make it collapse. However, when he got close to the golem, he didn't find any inscription, and he remembered that Lorraine said modern golems didn't have them anymore, meaning they had to be deactivated or defeated. Just when he was about to take it down using his mana spirit fusion, Laura successfully deactivated by saying the word halt, and Isaac apologized for his delay in deactivating it. When Laura asked what magic item he'd like to take, Rent replied that he'd like to continue searching, and they got to a spot where she showed him some items gotten from monsters. Just then, Rent saw a vial that made his undead senses start tingling, and Laura revealed that it contained the blood of a vampire, which was believed to be able to transform someone into a vampire when ingested. However, she said it was only a rumor because some people who ingested it ran mad and died, and told him about how he could sell it to High Mobility for a fortune. He ended up picking the remote-controlled airship.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man.
And that evening, showed it to Lorraine and told her about the nature of his job with the letters. When he showed her the vial of vampire blood, she asked if it was real, and he told her that his undead senses never lie. She warned him that something terrible could happen if he ingested it, and also stated that she wanted him to continue staying with her as an undead. But she knew his dream was to become something else, which was a mithril-class adventurer. As he contemplated ingesting the vampire blood, Lorraine asked why he chose to become a mithril-class adventurer in the first place. He was surprised by the fact that he hadn't already told her, and she said she couldn't ask him all the years they'd known each other because he once told her it was an unwritten rule to never ask an adventurer about their past. He sat on the couch and revealed that he was aiming to become a person who could stop a tragedy from ever happening. He said that in his home village of Hathala, his dad was responsible for doing shopping and everything else that required going outside the village. The day his parents first took him outside the village for the first time, a girl named Jinlin who was in a carriage with him told him he needed to be brave in order to become an adventurer, and also told him about her dream to explore the world. On their way back from their trip, they were attacked, and with her dying breath, Jinlin's grandmother told Rent and Jinlin to run away. Rent got teary-eyed when he saw his parents bloodied on the floor, and above them stood a terrifying wolf beast which stared at him with intent to unalive him until Jinlin grabbed his arm and ran away with him. Rent and Jinlin arrived at a spot in the forest close to a river, and they thought they were safe, but it didn't take long before the wolf beast reappeared. When the beast attacked them, Jinlin pushed Rent out of the way and got slashed by its claws. When Rent rushed to check in on her, she reminded him of her promise to protect him and told him to get stronger. The wolf beast tried to finish them off, but its attack was blocked by a fully armored adventurer, who then told them to stay back before engaging in a heated battle with the beast. The man fought on equal terms with the beast for a while, and he ended up scaring it off with a powerful attack which made a hole in the ground. After the fight, he went to check on Rent, and Rent asked him why he didn't come sooner before crying out loud over the loss of his dear friend. Afterwards, the adventurer carried everyone's bodies back to the village, and he met up with Rent, who was training with a wooden sword by a tree. Rent asked him how he could become an adventurer, and the man advised him to train in the village for the next 10 years so he'd be able to slay monsters and also learn how to read, write, use herbs and magic so that he'd be able to survive in the wild. Rent asked if he'd become a strong adventurer after doing all that, but the man said he couldn't be sure because it all depended on the amount of effort he put in. The man introduced himself as Wilfried, a mithril-class adventurer, and told Rent to come see him when he becomes an adventurer. Finally, he told Rent not to die until he'd made his dream come true. Back in the present, Lorraine realized that Rent learned his kindness from Wilfried, and Rent revealed that it was Wilfried's words that made him regain his will to live. Rent stated that he'd one day become a mithril adventurer and slay the wolf beast that unalived his loved ones. As he stared at the vial of vampire blood, he said he was scared to die, but also stated that he wouldn't give up, and Lorraine jokingly said that she'd give him a proper funeral if he did die after taking blood. Rent asked her to burn him to ash if he loses control, and then he ingested the vampire blood. Suddenly, he started having an intense seizure, and as his mind crumbled, he started barfing all over the place. In his mind, he could feel his body transforming into the body of a vampire. Yet he feared that he didn't want to become one of the ugly monsters at the dungeon. Lorraine held on to him as she reminded him of his dream, and this caused him to calm down as his body emitted a white light that covered the room. Much later, Clope forged a sword while revealing to his wife that he was making another sword for Rent because Rent had yet again reached a new level of power. At the same time, Elise started training by treating a broom like a lightsaber, and Lillian walked into the room to thank her for helping her get better. Meanwhile, Rise, Laura, and Rena arrived at the guild hall, and they were informed by Sheila that there were a whole bunch of new jobs for them. As she watched them argue over which job to pick, she advised them to be careful in the labyrinth. At the same time, Rent woke up in a dream world, and he was happy about the fact that he was feeling sleepy for the first time ever since becoming undead. He remembered all the hardships he'd endured so far in his journey, and when he woke up, Lorraine told him about the different kinds of vampires before congratulating him on his evolution. When Rent looked at his body, he was surprised by how human he looked, and when he took off his shirt, they discovered that he had vampire wings which he could shrink by focusing his mana on them. When he asked her what he'd become, she said she didn't know, but she was sure he was a more powerful being which was one of the weaker vampires which surprisingly had wings. She said she'd look into the wings later and told him to open up his face, and when he did so, she pointed out that he had red eyes and small fangs which made him a very human-looking kind of vampire. And afterwards, she held onto his face, and with a soft smile, she welcomed him back home. When Rent becomes human again, which baddie do you think he'd crack first, Lorraine or Sheila? Let us know in the comments. That's all for today's video. If you like anime recaps like this, check out this video here.